Hello, everyone. Welcome to Surfing Your Edge with Kristine Goad. I'm Kristine Goad, your Surfing Your Edge coach, and today I am with my guest, Pat Schultz, who is joining me. Welcome, Pat. It's really wonderful to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be your guest.
I'm excited about it. Pat and I have a lot in common, so it's a lot of fun to talk to her, and I think you're going to really enjoy this. If you haven't met Pat before, she's a success coach like no other. She has taken the mystery out of reaching your full potential and living the life of your dreams, and who doesn't want to do both of those things, right? She's boiled it down to the basics so you can understand the process right from the start, and Pat has studied the teachings of some of the greatest names in the human potential movement, but through her own experience, she has learned how to quickly apply those principles, and now she wants to share those secrets with you. So we're going to have a really fun conversation today.
Yes, we are.
All right. So, Pat, I'm always interested in how a person gets to become a coach. It's usually not a straightforward path. So I know you said you've spent a lot of time studying some of the great coaches who've come before, and I'm wondering how you got started.
Well, my coaching career, if you will, followed very nicely from my training business that I had created a little over 10 years ago. I did training in what we call soft skills, communication skills, team building, emotional intelligence, stress management, time management, etc.
All the things we all really need.
Yes. And one of the things that I discovered in the training is that no matter how great the evaluations were, after the training, most people eventually, some sooner rather than later, went back to doing things the way they had always done them. And of course, at the time, I didn't understand why this was happening because I really didn't understand the power of our paradigms and the way we think about things in controlling our habitual behavior. But it was good because they kept inviting me back to do the training. But I heard about Bob Proctor and answered a lead magnet and was on the receiving end of an email drip campaign and kept hearing more and more about his programs. And so I decided to become a student, a coaching student of his. And as I was going through his programs, I thought, wow, I could really use some of this information in my training programs. And so I started sneaking, some of his material into my training programs. And truthfully, Kristine, once I got deep into studying his material and seeing the changes that people were experiencing as a result of applying his teachings, I thought, man, I got to do more of this and less of the training, because then I can really help people make a change, a lasting change.
Nice.
And so I started doing less of the training and more of the coaching. And I used initially Bob's materials, his coaching curriculum, and eventually started adapting it to my own, so that if individuals weren't interested in taking specifically Bob's curriculum, perhaps they wanted a shorter period of coaching, I could offer that to them as opposed to being locked into his material.
Wonderful. I love that. It sounds like a really natural path.
Yes, it was. It was a very easy transition.
And can you tell me a little bit about, you said that you saw that the coaching was working for your people. You were started using Bob's practices with your people. That helped make a lasting change. But when you were coming in as a consultant, the change wasn't necessarily lasting. Can you talk at all about why you think why that is?
Well, again, at the time, I did not realize it, although it makes perfect sense to me now. So when we learn something new, whether it's time management or stress management or a new communication technique, we intellectually can say, oh, wow, I like that. I can see how that would work. I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so intellectually, we're in agreement, and we might even try to do it. But the way we think about that, what we're used to doing, that habit, the way we normally respond or the way we think we should respond is ingrained in us.
Absolutely.
And we don't realize it. And so, for example, let's just talk about stress management. There are certain things that we just believe are stressful. And whenever they happen, we're going to react with stress because that's the way we've learned to react. This is a stressful occurrence, and therefore I should be stressed. When in reality, stress is totally neutral. All right, we decide if we're going to get upset or not.
Right.
But because we've always reacted to this trigger in a stressful way, I can tell them all they want that stress is neutral, but they're going to react stressed because that's the way they've always reacted. And until we change the way we think about things, we're just going to respond on autopilot. And none of us, we don't realize that these beliefs we have, these things we've learned for all of our lives, dictate to us how we look at everything. What we think is stressful, what we think warrants our time, what we think warrants our money and attention, and we don't even think about it. It happens automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've shaped a lens that we see the world through since we were very young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we don't realize it's because it's just our lens. We think it's truth, and that's the way the world works.
And because I didn't address that in the training, I was giving them ideas. They liked the ideas. They even tried to implement the ideas, but they always fell right back to what they felt comfortable with, their comfort zone, what they were used to.
Absolutely.
Think about this at the beginning of the year. Everybody wants to lose weight. They go out and they buy their treadmills. And January, they're on the treadmill every day. And then February, it's every other day. And then March, it's once a week. And pretty soon, they're just hanging their clothes on the treadmill.
Right.
And why is that? Okay, it's the path of least resistance. That little voice is saying, oh, Pat, you don't need to do that treadmill today. You know, you did it yesterday. You're okay today. And that little voice is very, very subtle and seductive, and we give into it. And we give into it because we're not even aware that it's doing it to us.
Right, right. I love all of this. So when you're coaching a client, you can help them see that they have a lens, and you can help them see that they have this little voice in the back of their head that's trying to keep them safe and not making major changes might bring scary results, that unpredictable results. So you can go a lot deeper when you're coaching someone than when you're just coming in as a consultant.
Absolutely. And, you know, especially when you're in a very large group, you can't always address individual belief systems. Right. Now, group coaching is very helpful if it's in a relatively small group because we learn from each other. But in a large setting, it's hard to pull out everybody's individual belief system and work with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now that you're working full-time as a success coach and you're building your own business this way, I'm just wondering if anything about the transition to full-time coaching for yourself, if there's been any surprises that you weren't expecting in making that transition.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it was. It seemed to be like a natural transition. And I would say that the biggest surprise is how wary some people are of coaching. And I think it's because they're not quite sure what it's all about.
Right.
And so what exactly do you do when you coach somebody?
Right.
And they're just not sure what it's all about.
Right.
And when you explain to people, well, I help you with the way you think. Well, what do you mean you help me with the way I think?
They don't think that's the problem. The problem is out there. It's not with what's up here.
Yeah. And so it's really helping people to understand that you can read about exercise, but until you actually do it and maybe have somebody show you the proper way to do it, you're not going to have the kind of results that you want.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And what are the biggest challenges you're seeing with your clients now? And has it changed since COVID, or are we just expanding on the problems we already had, if that makes sense?
I am so glad you brought this up, Kristine, because at the very beginning of COVID, I talked to my coaching clients and I said, everywhere you look, there's COVID. It's all over the media. If you look at social media, every company imaginable came out with their, we want you to know we're here to help you through this difficult time. And I told my clients, I cautioned them, don't get wrapped up in COVID. Yes, it's out there. Yes, it's important. We don't want to get sick and die. Focus on what you want. And you don't want COVID. Focus on what you want. And so it took more effort because they had to consciously block out everything that was being offered relative to COVID. And even more recently, I talked with a client who was using the downtime in COVID to attend all the webinars they had on how to do this with your business during COVID and how to attract clients during COVID, and everything was how to do something during COVID. And she was starting to get into this slump. I said, stop watching those webinars. All right. You're already doing well. Don't get pulled down by that.
Yeah.
And I have to be careful when I say that because people will counter, well, are you saying that COVID isn't important? No, it is important. Just don't focus on it.
Right.
Focus on what you want.
Right.
Focus on what you want. And we don't want COVID. We want health, abundance, prosperity, a flow of clients and customers, money coming in. We want all these things. And that's what we need to focus on.
Right. And one of the things I talked about this week on my page was just the fact that COVID can feel like this wall in front of us and we can't see beyond it, right? We can't figure out what our next steps are because we don't know what's going to happen in COVID world. And so I like your idea of just focusing on what you want, and you really need to blow the picture up and figure out what you want in the long run, right? And work toward that and know that, yes, COVID is here. We don't know for how long, but really focusing on the big term, the long term, big stuff that you want. That can never go wrong.
Exactly. Doesn't mean that you might not have to do things differently because of COVID.
Right.
But don't lose sight of what you want.
Absolutely.
And you need to spend a little bit more effort on that simply because you need to push the COVID distraction out of your view.
Right. And actually, I'm looking at my notes and I'm not sure exactly where I intended to talk about this, but this seems like a good time. You talked to me when we first met about a surprise, something you learned about your mother after she'd passed that you didn't know. And I'm wondering if now would be a good time for you to share with the audience that story.
Absolutely. So after my mother passed away, we were preparing for her memorial service, and my son had discovered one of her term papers that she had written when she was working on her master's. She wrote it in 1988. She was 62 years old at the time. And the assignment, part of it, was to describe an ideal day 5 years into her future at that time. And she had dedicated a whole page to the details of this ideal future. And I want to read a couple of lines right from her paper.
Okay.
So her ideal future starts on a Caribbean island. And she says, I live there in a house very near the sea. There is a bright yellow light above the doorway. There is a fireplace and a wonderful fire is glowing. Stairs lead to the bedroom and outside to the sea. An elderly and handsome gentleman joins me for breakfast. He takes my hand and we walk in the sun and sand. I read that and I was in total shock. First of all, I never knew she had that dream. I never knew. She never said anything about it. And then, like, instantaneously, I realized, oh my God, she died and she never lived on that Caribbean island. Her dream never came true. And I really felt her loss. I was so sad for her that she had this secret dream.
A vivid one. It was vivid. It was a very vivid dream.
Yes, yes.
She knew exactly what she wanted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was really at that moment, Kristine, that I knew coaching was for me, all right? That I wanted to help other people live their dream life.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had known then what my mother or what I know now, I could have helped her.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't been exposed to this information back in 1988.
Right. Right. And now you're committed to making sure that everyone else you meet.
Yes. And it also made me take a hard look at myself. Mm-hmm. And where was I with my dreams?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have the same fate as my mom. I didn't want my dream to have the same fate as my mom's dream.
Yeah. And that actually leads into one of my questions, which is, what are your big goals for yourself right now?
Well, I had always wanted to do something to create a legacy based on my mom's inspiration. And I went back and forth on what I thought I might do. And this is actually the first time that I'm publicly saying this on your podcast. I've been working on rebranding my company, really zeroing in on the kind of person that I wanted to work with. And I've decided, and I'm announcing it, that what I'm going to do is create my coaching business as a mechanism to create this legacy in my mother's memory, in her honor, to help people make their dreams come true. And I don't want it to be a coaching business. I want it to be a movement.
Yes.
And so one of my aspirations is to be a transformational speaker. Mm-hmm. And through that transformational speaking, encourage people to work with me so that I can coach them to create their dream life, to live the dream that's in their heart, their heart's desire. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a coaching business. It's a transformational experience, if you will. And I am that transformational speaker. I am that transformational coach to help them do this. And I'm going to do it in memory and in honor of my mom, because even though she didn't make her dream come true, she gave me a kick in the pants from the world beyond. Okay. Isn't that just like a mother? to take a look at myself and say, what the heck are you waiting for?
Right.
What the heck are you waiting for?
Right. I'm writing that one down. What the heck are you waiting for? I'm going to put that in the show notes. That's exactly it. You know, we're all waiting. We're waiting for the perfect time. We're waiting for everything to fit together nicely until we have the right amount of money, until we have more time, until the kids leave the house, until this, you know, until that. And the truth is, there is no perfect time ever.
The best time to do something is now.
Yes, or yesterday. If you didn't do it yesterday, today is the day.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not sure that I prepared you for this question, but how do you get people kickstarted if they've got this dream? That this was my problem when I first started coaching. I went out to people and I'm like, you know, 3 friends of mine died this year, all before the age of 50, and I am not going to let any more people I care about die without doing something big with their lives, you know. So, but I couldn't get people who had the dream on the shelf, you know, to bring it off the shelf and look at it again. So, I'm wondering if you have a secret. If there's someone in our audience who has a dream and they're like, yeah, I always wanted to do that, but now, do you have a kick in the pants you can offer them?
Well, 98% of people die without fulfilling their goals and dreams. And so my question is, do you want to be part of the 98% or do you want to be part of the 2%?
Yes.
And we really can't force people to take action. I think that's the frustrating part of being a coach. We see things in people that they don't see in themselves, and we want so much for them to be able to do that thing that they want to do, but for whatever reason, they're not ready. And truthfully, we need to support them where they are and hope that one day they see that they too can be or do or have whatever it is they want.
And I think it comes back to what you first said about changing the lens that they're viewing themselves and their lives through. We get, you know, the older we get, the more we've lived within our narrow lane, the more likely we are, you know, the less likely we are to be able to see outside of that and to see ourselves in new ways and to see ourselves the way other people see us. We get so used to seeing ourselves the way we think they see us, and we lose sight of what we're truly capable of. So
we don't know what we're truly capable of. And I might ask your friends, all right, this is a dream. You've told me that you want to do this. So why haven't you done it? You're telling me it's your dream.
Right.
Why haven't you done it? And they're going to tell you why. They probably have a list of reasons.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, maybe they say, I don't have enough money to do it. Well, you don't need the money until you're ready to do it. How much money do you need?
Right. A lot of people don't even know that.
They do not know. They do not know. So find out how much it's going to cost first.
Right.
Right. And then start being open to receiving the money. Or I don't have the right teaching credentials or educational credentials.
Yeah, that's a big one.
All right. And well, who said you need those?
Right.
Who even said you need them? We think we need them, unless it's a position that absolutely requires you to have a PhD. All right. But we may think we need education in a particular area. You can always go get it if you think you need it, but you don't have to wait until you have it in order to get started.
Right.
And I think that's a big mistake people make. All right, I don't have the money. I don't have the education. I don't have the time. Well, all right, let's find out how much it costs. Let's start freeing our time, all right, like giving up something that's time consuming that doesn't mean as much to us as our dream. Let's open up some time and let's start working on the education. Let's start taking some steps.
Right.
If my mother had only purchased the plane ticket, she would have been one step closer.
Right.
We want to wait until we have all the ducks in a row before we take one little step.
Yeah. Yeah.
So start getting the money, start getting the time, start getting the education, and see what happens.
Yeah. And start just asking questions, how might I do this? Where might the money come from?
Absolutely.
Just let yourself be open to possibility rather than immediately shutting it down.
And we do that automatically.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of people have a hard time identifying what it is they want, because in that split second in their brain between when they say what they think what they want and they're going to say what they want, already their mind says, oh, you can't do that.
Absolutely.
And so they nix it.
Mm-hmm.
They think they don't want it,
mm-hmm.
but they do. It's just that they nixed it so quickly. They haven't registered that that's something that they want to do.
Absolutely.
And that's the way we're programmed.
Yeah.
Very early on.
Yeah. I've read that a lot of times by the age of 4, you've figured out how the world works. You've made a set of rules for when this happens. And unless we consciously look at those rules and that lens that we've created, we just continue making all of our decisions based on those assumptions that were formed by a child whose brain was nowhere near being finished.
And we needed to do that when we were 4 years old.
Yes.
We were trying to survive in the world. We were trying to get along. And so we needed to believe certain things.
Absolutely.
The problem, if you will, or the challenge is we're now 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and we're still thinking the beliefs of the 4-year-old,
right.
And they're no longer serving us. But we were never trained to think, does that work for me anymore?
Absolutely.
And not everything is working against us. Some of the things we learned are working for us. And as long as something is working for you, fine. But so much of it isn't. And we don't even question.
Right.
We don't even question. Well, this isn't working too well for me, but I'm not going to change it.
Right. Because that's the other thing, your little gremlin voice, the one that, it's trying to keep you safe. And it says, oh, we're not going to change it. This might not be comfortable, but at least we know this, right? We know we can live through this. If we change it, we don't know what's going to happen. So let's not change anything.
That's right. And the reason we have that comfort zone is we're thinking a certain way because of what we've been taught. We're feeling comfortable with it, all right? And so we want to keep the actions in line with what we're thinking and feeling. If we get some brand new idea, it upsets the apple cart.
Right.
Okay? Because the feeling is like, whoa, I'm not so sure I want to do this. And you have that dissonance. And that internal chaos, and we interpret that as fear.
Right.
We interpret that as fear. We don't interpret it as just discordance. It's like fear.
Yeah.
That really cuts to who we are as a person. I would lose myself if I were no longer crabby. I would lose myself if I didn't complain.
Right.
I would lose myself if I was no longer broke. And so people stay that way because they have this fear. They've identified that as fear.
Yeah.
And they don't want to lose themselves for somebody who could be a lot better.
Right. Right. And that's one of my favorite quotes, if I can paraphrase it. Something like, you have to give up the life you thought you wanted in order to have the one that you were born for, right? You've got to give up your ideas about yourself and your life in order to really fully live the life you're meant to live.
We look at giving up something, a sacrifice, as a bad thing.
Right.
Really, we're just choosing something better.
Right.
We're choosing something better.
And you can always choose again. If you make a choice and you're like, yeah, this isn't what I thought, then you choose again.
Yeah, we get that angst because we're now thinking something radically different than we're used to thinking. And it creates that butting of the heads in our belief, in our subconscious mind, where our beliefs are. And I always liken it to a toddler in Target who wants something. Okay, that toddler's going to put up a big fight.
Right. Yeah.
And we give in.
Right.
Because it's the easier thing to do. And
Right.
so we stay stuck. And we have to get to the point where what we want is a much stronger emotion than what we're afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Especially if you can focus on what you want and the good feelings that you're going to have when those things come. If you can focus on the good rather than on the bad, because you're going to attract what you focus on, and you definitely want to focus on what you want.
We think of where you're going to be able to travel when you make that money. Think about all the fun you're going to have if you step on that roller coaster. Yeah. Think of how great you're going to look in that new dress if you lose weight, and you don't eat the cookies.
Right.
We're so conditioned to look at all the negative stuff that's going to happen rather than look at all the good, fun stuff we're going to have when we get what we want.
Yes. Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. And you can start feeling good now. You don't have to wait. You can feel good on the journey. So I know that mindset is really big for both of us. And, we encourage people to set healthy goals and to try to reach those goals and all of that. But I think that we both probably understand that goal setting in and of itself is not enough. And that, because that's delayed gratification, right? When I reach the goal, then I'll feel this way. So I think one of the more effective ways I've been working with myself and my clients is to think about, who do you want to be every day? Like, and if you're being the person you want to be, then isn't that already success, right? So I'm just wondering who you set out to be every morning when you wake up.
So I am that transformational speaker I want to be.
Yeah.
And this just happened to me. So one of the things people don't always realize is that I do the same things that I coach my clients to do.
Yeah.
Personal growth is lifelong. And I may be maybe a step ahead of them, but I do, and I've done the same things that I share with them. Mm-hmm. And as I achieve a goal and I'm ready to move on to the next thing, I go through the same things that they do. And so as I'm thinking about this, thinking about it, and I'm preparing a keynote speech about my desire to be this transformational speaker. And I just had the thought come into my mind, Pat, what would a transformational speaker do with her coaching business? Well, she would transform people. It wouldn't be a coaching business. It would be a coaching movement.
Yes.
A movement. That's what it would be. And all of a sudden, I started looking at everything differently.
Mm.
And so when you ask yourself, what would the transformational speaker do? What would the transformational coach do? Suddenly the answer is there. And so that's who I want to be. And I need to think like that person thinks. And I need to behave the way that person behaves. And I need to structure my coaching company or business around that.
Absolutely.
And it just happened. And I'm like so excited to share it.
Yeah, that's
It was
exciting.
a breakthrough for me. And you shift the way you look at things when you say, well, if I'm that transformational speaker, if I'm that transformational coach, what would I be doing today?
Right. Right. And how
What
would I
would I
be
be
feeling
doing?
today?
And so I would be on your podcast letting people know that that's what I'm going to do.
I love it. I love it. That's exciting. Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things I did too when I started. I became like this adventure retreat leader, and it's like, okay, what does an adventure retreat leader look like? You know, and what parts of myself would I want to put forward, and what parts of myself would I want to, you know, kind of phase out? And I was able to make some pretty big changes based on just, you know, this idea of what I really wanted to project out to other people, and it's really powerful to think about your
It,
identity and choose your own identity.
and, you know, people might be listening in and thinking, okay, well, I don't want to be a transformational speaker or an adventurer retreat leader. I just want to sell more at work, okay?
Right.
And I really want to share this story about one of my clients who's a financial advisor. And
Mm.
so she has to do a lot of cold calls or semi-cold calling on the phone. And there's another woman in her company who's a mega producer. And we always say, now, what would she be doing? What would she be thinking? Would she hesitate to pick up that phone? Heck no. Would she be afraid to call that person? Heck no. All right. She'll eat them for breakfast because, you know, she doesn't think about those things. She walks into a room and she owns it. She picks up that phone and she owns it. And so when we think about who do I want to be and how would that person talk, carry herself, dress, what would she do? How would she look at this? We think, oh my gosh, I'm thinking so small.
Yes.
I'm playing
Right.
so small.
Right. Love it. I love that. Thank you for that. The real world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done the whole telephone fundraising thing, and it can be really scary to pick up the phone. So
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I get that. And
And that's why your desire for what you want has got to be stronger than your fear of picking up the phone.
right. And yeah, your clear vision for what you want.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful idea you have to have that picture of what life's going to be like for you when you get there.
Yeah. 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 So I think we're coming to the end of my questions for you. Let me ask you this one. This is one of my favorites. There are days when I just don't want to do anything. And I'm wondering what you do on days when, if you have those days, and if you do, what do you do when you wake up and you're like, you know what, I just don't wanna, I don't wanna.
I have several answers to that. Okay, we all experience that. So sometimes I play a little game with myself. So if I have a big project ahead of me, or maybe not so big project, but I know I need to do it, and I don't really feel like doing it, I'll say, okay, I'll just work on it for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
I'm just going to work on it for 15 minutes. And then after that, I'll go eat ice cream or whatever. Okay, I'm just going to work on it for 15 minutes. And so I might work on it for 15 minutes and go eat ice cream.
Without feeling guilty.
Or I might do it for 15 minutes and then I get like on a roll. And before I know it, oh my gosh, an hour's gone by. I almost have it done.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I only work it on it for 15 minutes, I did what I said I was going to do. Maybe I'll go back and do another 15 minutes later on. The other thing that I do, and I've shared this with my clients as well, is if you're working on something, like making those phone calls, all right? Or I'm working on a keynote speech, or I'm working on some coaching curriculum, whatever it is, and you're getting discouraged. We've been trained that if we just work harder and more forcefully and plow right through this, we'll get it done. Well, force negates, all right? So yes. If you're beating your head against the wall, beating it against the wall 20 times harder isn't going to work. Now, we laugh, but that's the way we've been taught, all right?
Absolutely.
Really? That's the way we've been conditioned. Hey, if you're beating your head against the wall, you just keep beating it even harder, and eventually you're going to figure it out. So what I tell people is take a break. Do something you like, something for fun. Because when you're beating your head against the wall, you're feeling discouraged, frustrated, disappointed, angry. None of these is a good feeling. Right. None of these produces a good vibration. Right. And when you're in a negative vibration, you're only going to attract negative stuff. So stop what you're doing. Do something that's going to put you in a better mood. Eat the ice cream, watch the TV show, go for a walk, call a friend, do something to get yourself in a better mood, raise your vibration, and then go back to making your phone calls or writing your speech or posting on social media or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
But we've been taught to barrel through and work in a frenzy. Mm-hmm. You need to stop and take a look at, what am I feeling now? And this isn't a good feeling, and this isn't going to produce what I want. Right. It's counterintuitive to take that break.
Yeah, I hear you. I like both of those. I like both of those suggestions. And there are definitely days when I've just gone off and done my own thing, because it's the only way that I'm going to get back to being the person I need to be and do what I need to do.
It's amazing how our conditioning controls what we do.
Yeah. And our parents didn't necessarily know what to tell us when we were acting up as kids and didn't want to do something. And so we've internalized that voice, and we're just like, do it anyway, right? Suck it up. So we don't, it's one of those things we don't necessarily stop and look at and say, is that really helping?
Our parents did the best they could with what they knew at the time.
Right, exactly. So, Pat, I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I want people to be able to find you and find out more about what you do. So where should I send people who want to know more?
I am actually living the process of creating my dream at this very moment. I don't have a website to direct people to, but I would love it if your listeners would follow me on Instagram.
Okay.
So they can know what I'm up to, and it's at Success Coach Pat.
Nice.
Okay. And if they'd like to follow me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. It's Pat Schultz, MBA. And again, they can see what I'm up to. And I'll be announcing on social media the new name of my company, the new website, all that new stuff. but they can live, they can see me actually doing what I tell people they need to do, and would love to share it with them when it's available.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love you're going for the legacy project and that you're honoring your mother this way. And I'm super excited to see where things go for you.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure where it's all going to end up, but that's part of the journey. That's part of the fun.
Absolutely.
I want to see where it takes me.
I completely agree. It's all an adventure. And if it's not, then you're not doing it right. So, Pat, is there anything that I should have asked you and didn't, or anything that you'd like to add to the conversation to make it feel more complete for you?
Well, I know this is going to resonate with you, Kristine. You know, I look at people and I tell them, if I can do this, you can do this. Okay? I'm not tall, thin, blonde. All right. I have gray hair. You know, if I can do these things, you can do these things. And you absolutely do not want your kids or your grandkids finding out after you've passed away that you had this dream inside and you never even told anybody and you never really thought you could do it. And there's no time like the present to take some steps toward that. And living a life of regret is a slow death. And it's a lot more painful than just going for it and failing. Okay, and, you know, it's over. You tried it, you failed, and it's done, rather than this slow, painful death of living a life of regret. And that's what I mean by, does your bucket list have a hole in it? Okay, because we get this idea of something that we want, and we put it in our bucket list, but then we have all these limiting beliefs that are telling us that we can't do it, and it's leaking out of our bucket. And it doesn't have to be that way. There are people like you where you work with your clients and you help them do these things. And a lot of famous people use coaches. You know, they're not afraid to say, hey, I want a coach to work with me. So I hope your fans, those who follow you, reach out to you and make their dreams come true.
Thank you, Pat. I feel the same about you. I love that I've met you, and we're going to...
Me too. The feeling's mutual.
Yes. All right. I think that was an absolutely wonderful place to end. And thank you for the bucket list bringing the whole thing around to your bucket list might have a hole in it. So I'm going to wrap things up here. I will put Pat's Instagram and Facebook information in the show notes so you can find her easily. And feel free to leave messages and comments here anytime you're watching the replay. And I'll make sure that Pat sees them and gets you an answer. We want to stay in touch with you. So let us know what we can do for you. And until I see you again, I am wishing you wonder. Bye. Thank you so much for being with me today, Pat.
Thank you again.
Thank you.